Hi everyone, and thank you for joining us once again for our Sunday talk within the Nine-Sided Circle. I'm one of your two hosts, Nor Kyle, along with...
Your other host, Mushtaq Ali.
Yay! Alright, so, spiel. How can we keep this brief? We're learning how to do that.
Um, how can we keep this brief? Enjoy the thought of subscribing to our channel. We would love it if you did. Consider the possibility of making a comment because we'd love to hear from you. The more comments we get, the happier we are. And we try and answer all of them. Sometimes, some days are better than others because we get busy. And like our videos because it makes us happy. Hit that like button. We will do a happy dance every time you hit the like button.
Mm-hmm.
And if we get 100 likes on this video, I'll record us doing a happy dance.
Oh my god, yes. Okay, so go for it,
There
because
you
we
go.
could make that happen, yeah. Alright,
So what are
so,
we talking about tonight?
we are getting artsy this evening, musically speaking, and we are going to be talking about music. We're going to be talking about the universal vibration. What the hell do we mean by that, Mushtaq? Why is this
Um,
relevant?
well, not exactly the universal vibration, but the science of vibration as it
There
relates
you
to
go.
music.
Yes. I
We
still
talked about
have
the universal vibration a couple, 3 weeks ago.
Spandakarika on the brain. Yeah.
Yeah.
So if you want to learn about that, you can head back a couple videos or two to our
Yeah, we'll
first
put a link to it.
part on the Spandakarika. Yes. So with that said, yeah, we're going to be talking about, as you say, the science of vibration this evening.
And music.
And music. Yes. And how that ties to both Sufism and the fourth way practices, among other things. So,
Yeah, it's one of the places where Sufi material and fourth way material can meet because Gurdjieff was quite the musician in his own way. He was not a formal musician in the sense of, having been formally trained, except for his voice. By all accounts, he had a good singing voice, and he was trained as a child and as part of an Orthodox choir, which means he got some sophisticated singing training. So that's one area where he his work and the work of Sufi musicians tend to come together.
yeah, and as far as Sufism goes, not every Sufi lineage, Sufi tradition has a very musically oriented process of going about the spiritual work that they do. But in Turkey, in Turkish lineages, and in South Asian lineages, music is an immense part of Sufi practice and the carrying of the torch from one generation to the next and conveying through music certain knowledge, certain types of experience.
Yeah, so in India and Pakistan, you have the Qawwali singers who are almost to a person connected with the Chishti tariqa, which is one of the big Sufi lineages in India.
And it's
And
all
that's what
about
they
music.
specialized in
Yeah.
is music, yeah. So why music? What's so special about music? What do you think, Noor? What's so special about music?
I can only speak for myself in saying that it is extremely powerful in terms of how I engage with my 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 sense of aliveness, my sense of beingness, my presence in the world is tied in a large way to my experience of music as an encounter with quote unquote the real with a capital R. So
Yeah.
that's how I would say it. What about you?
God must like music, otherwise he wouldn't have created the universe with it. That's my particular point of view.
Yeah. And that's
Everything around
huge.
us is music.
Yeah. And that's a big in certain Hindu traditions, that's a big kind of like a core tenet, isn't it?
Yeah, and that goes back to the Spandakarika,
Yeah.
the idea of the universal sound. Um,
Which we also have in Sufism. I mean,
yes.
these things just kind of circle back on themselves over and over again.
So, now, we have run across the idea that music is somehow bad or sinful. In Islam, there has been a big argument for 1400 years on whether or not music is okay. In Christianity, it's the same. You go to a lot of churches, especially in the south of the United States, and they're totally anti music except for church music. None of this bougie woogee music or the devil's music, rock and roll, or anything like that.
Woogie woogie,
Bougie woogee music.
woogie woogie music, etc. Yeah, I mean, I have known people who converted to Islam and then said they were going to abstain, quote unquote, from the consumption, quote unquote, of music.
Yeah, the most famous of whom was Cat Stevens.
Ah, yes. Yeah.
Yeah, let us not forget him. Now,
Yes.
here's my take on this. Any culture, society, or group that demonizes music is doomed to die because you will dry up and blow away because your heart will be 3 sizes too small. And I'll never convince any of them of that, but that's the case. Fear the
And
culture that has no music.
I tend to agree with you. As I said, music is a big part of how I experience, you know, vivacity and the force of living energy that flows through all things and such. But in a literal way, as you were mentioning earlier, that's what music is.
Yes.
Um, and yet there's kind of a double-edged sword to music too, isn't there?
Oh, yeah, you can use music to enslave the mind. You
Right.
can use music to create massive unconsciousness.
And arguably, I mean, when I've heard people explain to me the reason why, for example, Muslims in certain communities may want to abstain from, again, the consumption, quote unquote, of music, is because of that. It's like a distraction, a numbing agent, an intoxicant.
And occasionally, a poison.
Yeah. Yeah, so poison, that's an interesting word to use.
Well, take a look at something like rap music.
Not,
You have,
you gotta be careful with
uh,
that. Just, you know.
well,
Yeah.
I don't have to be careful with it. If people don't like what I have to say, fuck them. Sorry. You have incredibly powerful rappers that are deeply spiritual. Two that come to mind are Tall Paul and Superman, two of my favorites.
Oh,
But
yeah.
there are a lot more. Tupac was pretty much edging in that direction, even. And then
Yeah.
you have these guys who are all about, shooting each other and being gangsters and all like that. So one is toxic, the other is not.
Yeah. I mean, I think that's. I would pretty much make the same. Uh, and some people would prefer to dismiss rap altogether, which I don't think.
I think that that would be stupid because as
Yeah.
an art form, it's incredible when you have somebody who's good, and then it's a matter of good for good or good for evil.
Yeah.
I mean, Tall Paul's rap "Prayer in a Song" is outstanding.
So again, it's the attitude that we bring to it, it's the way that we utilize it, the way that we engage with it that kind of shifts the relationship and effect that music has on us.
Yeah, music's like a gun. Unless you play it, it just sits there. If you play it for target practice or putting food on the table, it's one thing. If you play it to hurt people, that's another. But it's all about the intent.
So it holds a lot of power.
Yeah. So I've managed to touch on two offensive subjects so far. I'm excited about that. How many people can we freak out and offend today?
Yes. Well, we endeavor to do so, right? So, um, where do we begin this evening?
We
I have a
begin,
question.
yes,
Yeah, Jonathan, sure.
Nora, you spoke of conveying knowledge through music. And music for me, I felt the impact on me physically, what, makes me want to move. And I felt it touch my heart. But I can't say that music has ever spoken to me. Now, I should say that the music I almost solely listen to has no lyrics.
Hmm.
So maybe that's why it doesn't speak to
not
me.
necessarily.
Right. I would.
So how could knowledge be conveyed without lyrics?
Um, in
Well,
Western music,
yeah.
I think of like Beethoven. Beethoven, his symphonies to me convey knowledge. Like the fifth, the opening lines of the fifth, the fate knocking at the door. That whole symphony has a certain amount of information on how to deal with fate that is transmitted at a nonverbal level.
That's. I mean, I would say, frankly, most of that knowledge transmission is nonverbal.
Yeah.
Sometimes the words, to be honest, get in the way. If we're going to talk about lyrics and conveying things through language, much of what is conveyed is, we could say, emotional, psychological, subconscious.
Now, when it is lyrics, the best thing to do is to look at music of the East, where you're dealing with, say, ilahis, which are Sufi songs that are usually poems by the great Sufi poets like Rumi or Yunus Emre. And they are set to music in such a way that the words penetrate into your psyche and get below the superficial levels and get deep into you.
Yeah, and it's especially powerful when you have. There's something about, and I'm sure we'll touch on this more as we go, monotony and repetition and simplicity that really allows something to get into you.
Yeah. And it's a specific sort that follows very, very defined musical patterns.
Yeah. So
Nora's
something.
been learning an ilahi that is one of the traditional ones in our order, called Ovesi Korani, and it has a really interesting musical pattern, a descending glissade from the beginning to the end that repeats over and over again, and just gets inside of you.
Yep.
And then you never ever forget the words. And then you have to think about what the words mean. And then you become enlightened. It's just like that. And don't worry, I'm not going to ask you to sing it.
I can sing it to everyone eventually. It's still a work in progress right now. And I would love to share it at a point where I feel like I can bring that magic to it. God willing. But it's a really, every time I listen to it as I'm learning it, I am drinking in, I'm doing my best to drink in that knowledge and to think about not only what the words are saying explicitly, but what is being evoked for me, just kind of being exposed to it. And there's more to it than what is on the surface, for sure.
Yep. So, how do we start with this? The place to start with this is at Pythagoras. He was the guy who really sat down and went, what's going on with vibration? His instrument was the monochord, a single string on a box that he could pluck. And it had the monochord has a movable bridge, so you can set it up in different places. Or you can just stop the string with a piece of metal or your finger even, and create different tones. And what we know is that starting with any given note, you have a series of harmonics within that note. Harmonics are sub-vibrations. And they exist in every note. And depending on which ones are brighter or dimmer, that's what gives any musical instrument its characteristic sound. It's not the note itself, it's the overtones. So
that's why a piano sounds,
like a piano, yeah.
Or a reed flute sounds like a reed flute. Has those unique, each has its own unique personality, really.
Yeah. If you had two instruments that sound exactly the same, you might as well throw away one of them. So, here is what Pythagoras discovered. He discovered that there is a tonic note. Can you give me a tonic note, Noor? Any note.
Any note. I'm just pulling out my piano. Alright, so now that I know this is going to work, I'm going to play a C4.
Let's hear it with your voice. Now go up a fifth. Perfect fifth. Can't hear you. You're not coming in on the mic.
What about now? Alright, let's try that.
Oh, there you go. So, every time you hit the note, it drops the mic out.
I don't know what to tell you.
Opening bars from 2001: A Space Odyssey. That's tonic fifth octave.
Yeah, that's right.
Yep, that's the one. So, this is what Pythagoras discovered first on the string. He discovered the octave first. If you stop the string in the center, you get the same note, but higher. And you know how you know it's the same note? Anybody, how do you know it's the same note?
Sounds exactly the same.
It sounds the same, just higher. It's weird, but your body knows that it's the same. Your body knows that it's a doubling of vibration. Then you have the perfect fifth, and then you have the third. And 135 is a major chord. Can you give us a major chord, Nor?
Yeah. So that would be.
And that is the basis for figuring out all music. Now, the Greeks took this and they said, oh, the musical scale has 7 tones. And they never took it much further than that. So Greek music was modal in nature, which means you have these 7 notes plus the octave, and depending on where you start it, it gives you different feelings. The most obvious of which to most people are the major and minor scale. Can you give me a major scale, Nor?
I'll give you a major scale.
Yeah. Good. Now give me a minor scale. Flat the third.
Flatting the third.
That's the one that needs to be flatted.
Yeah, see, you're calling me up on my limited skills now.
Yeah, but at least you can carry a tune. So I ain't got nothing on you.
Okay.
Again, because I couldn't hear that. Yep.
Right?
Yeah,
Anyways.
so a major key sounds happy. A minor key sounds melancholy.
Yeah, I mean, we talked about this before where
Yeah.
certain modes have different moods to them, different flavors to them. And it kind of reminds me of in Hindustani music as well, South Asian music as well, you have the equivalent of modes, and they have different times of day, they have different moods to them, different spirits that they bring to the music. And those also have it's like a neurobiological way that we respond to these things.
Yeah. The difference is that Hindustani music, Iranian music, Turkish music, Arabic music realized that there were more than 7 notes. I mean, we figured out that there were 12, and they figured out that there are like 24 or more, depending on where you are. They understood the use of the semitones in dividing up the octave. And that's what allows, like Hindustani music and Carnatic music, to create these powerful emotional spaces within their music. And it's all done with vibrations. Is understanding how to divide the vibration in certain ways to express emotions as if it was a language. So think about emotion. The language of music speaks to all 3 centers. It speaks first to the moving center, second to the emotional center, third to the intellectual center. And really good music will touch on all three. Objective music, in the sense of Gurdjieff, will touch on the fourth as well.
Or
Meaning the
tempo.
idea of man number four.
Yes,
So,
yeah.
yeah.
Okay, yeah. Have we discussed that? I mean,
Yeah, in various places we talked
Yeah.
about that, and I will find something and put it up.
How about the Chinese music? Because it is based on the pentatone.
Yeah, Chinese music and some other Asian music is based on a pentatonic scale. Easy way to understand the pentatonic scale, it's all black keys on the piano. If you play that, you get a pentatonic scale. And they just divide it differently. They have all the same notes as we do. It's just that they think about the divisions of the octave slightly differently. And it will also create powerful music. I just don't know as much about it as I do, say, Turkish music or Iranian music. So,
yeah, I can't speak to that either,
yeah.
unfortunately. But nonetheless, I mean, this is when we talk about resonances, right? That is a these are laws like gravity, right? We can't really go out of them, so to speak. And we're talking about the number of, like with a string that vibrates, right? It's going to vibrate at a certain frequency. And that's going to be the same no matter what instrument you're playing, as long as it's the same pitch.
Yeah, or you have a tube and you blow air through it. It's going to vibrate at a certain frequency. And you make the tube longer or shorter in various different ways, and it changes the frequency, but it works within the same laws. The rules of music are the same for Chinese, Iranian, Indian, Western music. It's just we understand the division slightly differently.
Yeah, it's like how you frame it and then how you utilize it that tends to be different culturally speaking.
Yeah, so nobody enjoys dissonance.
Apparently, even people who are, they call A music, even they don't like dissonance.
Yeah.
They may not be able to perceive consonance, which is, the utilization of harmony and, the opposite of dissonance. But even people who are A music do not enjoy the sound of dissonance, so that's pretty telling.
Yeah. Now, melody is one part of music. The other part of music is rhythm. And it's essential. It's hard to have music without rhythm. You can kind of do it, but it becomes very, very weird. Other than, well, even with a drone, right? Even if you're working with a drone, you have rhythm within the drone because the drone is created either by the plucking of strings or breathing through a tube or various other ways, using a bow back and forth, but there is always a rhythm within it. So you have the didgeridoo, for instance, which is just a drone instrument, but the breath, as you create the vibration in the tube, creates a rhythm. And a rhythm is a movement in time. Yeah, tempo, time.
Yes.
Yeah, music happens in time, which is another one of the magic things about it. If you think about it, you can experience maybe 3 notes in the now, but everything else is held in memory or anticipated.
There's something to be said about that anticipatory factor, isn't there?
Yeah, if you, I mean, oftentimes you'll know how a tune should go, even if you've never heard it before. And this seems to be a universal human thing.
So a lot of these fall under what would be called psychophysical cues. So those are things like, pitch, tempo, rhythm, repetition, complexity, melodic complexity, and harmony. Syncopation is another one we haven't touched on.
No, go ahead and touch on syncopation for a
And
moment.
I don't necessarily know how to describe that to others. Do you? Syncopation is kind of like rhythm on the offbeat, isn't it?
Yeah, it is accenting not the first beat, but a different one.
Yeah. So that we're going to be talking about state change. We're going to be getting into
Yes.
that. And syncopation plays a pretty big role in that in many types of music. So all of these are kind of across cultures, so this doesn't require any kind of cultural context. These are the things that tend to affect people no matter where they come from, no matter what type of musical experience they may have had in the past or what kind of associations they may have with that music.
Yeah. So if you want to understand something like syncopation, you have a regular beat. This beat is, its strong beat is the first one. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. Now, if I were to syncopate this, I might syncopate the weakest beat, which is the third. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. And then offset it a little bit. Like that. Hard to do with just clapping, but that's the basic idea. It is accenting a weak beat rather than what we would think of as the strong beat. And the strong beat is felt in the body. All rhythm is in the body. And so we know what the strong beats are, we can move to them, and syncopation it's like being tickled.
Well, it's like the groove factor.
Yeah.
That's how I've heard it described. Like, if we think about music that's groovy, quote unquote, it tends to have syncopation in it. That's, but that oomph to it.
Yeah.
Something that our bodies respond to, our psyches respond to that. And we do have cultural cues, which might be like instrument choice, the language that's used, the motifs that are occurring within the music, the context in which the music is played, the presentation of the music, how it's performed, and all of that, and the cultural significance of it. Is this wedding music? Is this church music? Is this funeral music? Is this birthday party music? Those things are more culturally oriented, whereas psychophysical cues tend to be, they're not dependent on context. They're going to have some kind of impact on you if you are able to receive that.
Yeah.
What
Haley.
about if you have a ear loss? I have hearing
Hmm?
problems,
Yeah, so
so
does Noor.
I do too, yeah, yeah. And my mother does as well. So, I mean, that does impact the way that we see music. But even my mother can feel it in her body. Where
Yeah,
she,
that's
there's
very
a,
common.
yeah.
One of my oldest friends was a woman who was deaf from age 3. And when I say deaf, I mean, pretty much completely deaf. And she was a dancer. And she was a good dancer. She was good enough that on a lark, when she went home to visit her parents, there was a tryout for, I forget the name of the TV show, it was based on a movie about dancing. And she tried out and she got the part. She didn't take it, but she was offered the part of somebody just because she was that good.
Wow. I mean,
Yeah.
how is it? Could she could memorize the rhythm in her body, or did she feel it
She
like in
felt
the
it.
floor?
She felt it in her cells, basically. She could feel vibration through the floor. She could feel movement of the air. She could feel all of the parts of music except for the notes.
Mm,
And she basically said that she experienced something like notes without it being notes.
yeah. I mean, that sounds like someone who has attuned to that in a pretty exquisite way.
Yeah,
Like
she
senses
worked
other
very
than
hard for
hearing.
most of her
Yeah.
life to develop that. And
So
she
is there
actually did a double major in psychology and dance. So,
But I mean, that also says that something like drumming
yeah.
is almost universally accessible.
Yeah, there are very few cultures that don't use drums. The only one that comes to mind off the top of my head is the Zulus, who they're more voice oriented, but the way they sing has percussion in it. So who can say? And that's not to say they don't have any drums. It's just that their main mode of music is vocal.
Yep. Yeah.
So now that we've talked about all of the boring stuff and the people with short attention spans have quit out of this video, we can talk about the good stuff.
Stuff.
So, the science of music and vibration is the science of state change. If you understand the music, you understand how to change your state or another human being's state. The technical term is hal.
State. Like
Yes,
a temporary state.
temporary state, as opposed to a maqam, which means a station, which is basically permanent. By the way, in Arabic music, what we call modes or scales are called maqams. They are also in Turkish, I think. Yeah. In Iranian music, it's daska, and in Indian music, it's raga. And so, Sufis use particular kinds of music to create specific states in the listeners. And this is done for a couple of different purposes. One of the classic ones is healing. And so back in Turkey, back in the Ottoman Empire, you had the first psychiatric hospitals. And their methods of treatment included having musicians who would play in certain modes for the inmates of the hospitals. And they would be there all day playing beautiful music for people, better than our modern psychiatric hospitals. And so, according to Sufi thought, there are maqams that are really good for certain kinds of healing of the body and mind and heart. And they will use that. But the most important use of music as state change is to allow people to experience, if only temporarily, states of awakeness. Just waiting to see if there was going to be any more of that.
Me accidentally plinking around on my piano.
Yeah. So what do you say about that, Noor?
I think it's definitely reminds me of what I learned when I did Hindustani vocals, which was, yeah, you use different ragas to utilize different, I mean, I don't want to say powers, but I kind of mean that, you know, like you were saying, healing states, and it's meant to bring something out in you, right? Like your ability to heal yourself, or positivity, or restfulness, things of that nature can be inspired in us by certain types of music. You lost Jonathan.
Yeah, he always has such a shitty connection.
That's okay.
I blame the governor of Florida for that.
It's back.
There he
Okay.
is.
Okay, so the science of states.
The science of states. So, now, Gurdjieff was exposed to this since childhood because the Eastern Orthodox Church has the same musical traditions. I think their musical tradition is way more powerful than the Western Church. My own personal taste. I would rather listen to Eastern Orthodox music, especially Syrian Church, or that sort of thing. But, you know, the Greek is also cool. And it uses particular modes to evoke its states. There will be in the description, and I'll also post it in the forum, a playlist of sacred music from around the world for you guys to listen to.
He's been putting it together all week, and I think you all would really enjoy it.
Yep, and it's still, I have barely touched on as much as I wanted to. But it'll give you a taste for what we're talking about.
So before we move forward, Jonathan, did you have anything? I see you're unmuted. Okay, good. Just checking. All right, so Gurdjieff.
Gurdjieff. So, when Gurdjieff got to the West, one of his students was named Thomas de Hartmann, and he was a musician, a composer, a pianist. And the two of them worked together. And they created a body of sacred music, which is very interesting and kind of unique. Poor Jonathan.
I think that's just his audio that's connecting.
Yeah.
So they can
Okay.
be on video elsewhere. Okay.
It's all good. So, Gurdjieff used this mostly as accompaniment to Jonathan, turn one of your cameras off because it's very distracting.
You did you. I hope you don't mind.
There you go.
Back. There you go. Okay.
Yeah.
So, to accompany, I'm thinking you're going
To
say
accompany
the
his dance, yeah.
Yes.
His performances. And for me, when I listen to his music, and by the way, his music has been reproduced. You have original stuff that he did, recordings of his playing the harmonium. You have recordings of de Hartmann, and you have such musicians as Keith Jarrett, who did an entire album of Gurdjieff music once upon a time, which I think is some of the best expression, except for my favorite, the Gurdjieff ensemble, who have taken Gurdjieff's music and reset it to the traditional instruments of the area instead of piano. And their music is exquisite. But where am I going with all of this? States. So Gurdjieff used the music both to delimit the dance and to create the state in which the dancer could dance the dance in a conscious way.
So it's keep you awake music.
Keep you awake music as opposed to put you to sleep music. So there's plenty of put you to sleep music. You can find it just by listening to a lot of the most popular music in the moment.
Yeah, and we don't mean like sleepy time
No.
lullaby music. We mean like puts you in a state of
Not being present.
not being conscious of your actions and the power of your thoughts and things of that nature. And so much of the music that is popular is meant to maybe not necessarily put you in a state of, blue trance, but in a trance state where it provokes emotions in you that don't necessarily lead anywhere. They're pretty, or they're fun, or they're sad, or they're uplifting, but where does that energy go? It's really just listening for the sake of listening, and that's fine. But there's so much more possibility and power in what music can do, and that's specifically what we're pointing to.
Yeah, or it takes you someplace that you really don't want to go.
Yeah.
An example is patriotic music. All patriotic music is designed to put you to sleep. All of it. I have never heard a piece of patriotic music that would do a sense of awakeness. So you get that kind of music going, you get a whole crowd singing it, and it creates a particular form of emotion which becomes very manipulative. And the next thing you know, you're invading Poland. And that kind of music is like black magic.
Yeah.
Get people working at their lowest common denominator instead of their highest common denominator. So, music that would work on your highest common denominator, you can find it in every culture. Ralph Vaughan Williams, The Lark Ascending. If you don't know that piece of music, look it up. Listen to it. It is a piece of music designed to bring you to very high states of consciousness. You have to get through the emotion of it, but once you do, your mind becomes uplifted. How about you, Noor? Can you think of a piece of music that does that?
I can't remember the name of it.
Hum a few bars.
I couldn't even hum it. It's instrumental. It involves a reed flute. songs from a movie soundtrack. When I recall it, I can post about it later. For sure.
Yep. But there are some songs, there's a song from a Rumi poem called The Dance of the Atoms, or the Poem of the
That's
Atoms.
That is
Ah,
it. Yeah.
yeah. That's one that will definitely raise your consciousness. And it's not like you have to go to old music. Noor and my friend Arden Lee, who is a musician, is consciously working on crafting her music to create specific states of consciousness to heal rather than harm, while still being really good rock and roll.
Yeah, I mean, there's this speaking of popular music, a song that in the past has really moved me is
Closer to the microphone.
it's a song by the band Muse, and it's like a remix of one of their really popular songs, and it has a very uplifting feel to it. It's to me, it's been very powerful to listen to in the past. Yeah, so I mean,
Yeah.
we are not limited to just, old church music and classical instrumentation and things like that.
So, where do you start? As I said, to understand this, you start with Pythagoras. And you start with his musical theories. It turns out some of them are just flat wrong, or they don't work as well as he thought that they would. But that's okay, because we can know that and still find value in what he does. Pythagoras tried to do everything in perfect ratios. And real music doesn't always like perfect ratios. If you do that, you get what are called the wolf notes or the wolf chords, which, as might be hinted by the name, could be a bit cacophonous. But you start there, and you learn the idea behind the ratios that affect the notes, and then you look at the modes and understand what the 7 modes are and how they affect the feel of the music. And then, once you've gotten that down a little bit, you start listening to sacred music. There's lots and lots and lots of it. Whatever your favorite flavor of sacred music is, it's out there. And you'll be maybe surprised at what actually turns out to be sacred music and what turns out to be not. And then you go to a Sufi gathering and get involved in something like a zikr, which is an entirely musical experience at a certain level. Would not you say, Noor?
Say so.
Yeah.
I mean, sometimes it's more rhythmic, but sometimes it is very much music that anyone would recognize as such. And it can be a very powerful experience. So what makes that different from, listening to popular music and having a cathartic experience?
The basic thing is that is designed specifically to produce states of higher consciousness, specifically states of awakeness.
Yeah.
And it's very carefully crafted most of the time. You have different parts of the ceremony that use different rhythms, different melodies, different beats, different tempo, and everybody harmonizes their breath, their movement, their structure to match with the music. And it forms entrainment amongst the group, so you get a sense of group flow going on, and it points you in a specific direction.
So this is group flow as opposed to
Yeah.
group hypnosis.
Yeah. Yeah, there's enough hypnosis in the world. We don't need to add to it.
Yeah. So then, how do we take that flow forward as opposed to letting, that's the end of the game where you're just, again, that may be directed into a catharsis. Everybody has this powerful spiritual / religious experience. They go home like, wow, that was cool. Can't wait to have that again, that high.
Yeah, so catharsis is easy. Flow is much harder. If I want to take a group and bring them to a sense of catharsis, all you need is energetic and emotional release and a little bit of trance. If you want a group to be awake, you need that sense of flow instead of catharsis. I might even say flow is the antithesis of catharsis.
That's fair, yeah. Yep.
Yeah. And that requires something different. And I don't know that I could describe it plainly, clearly. It's like chocolate. I can tell you about it all day, but you won't understand what I'm saying until you eat a piece. Then you'll get it, and my words won't matter. But the point is, experiencing the state points you to the possible. So here you are, you're doing zikr, you're having a good time, the whole group's grooving, and you're like, oh my God, I am completely awake in doing this. And once you've touched that, you know that it exists. You know this state of awakeness is real. And if you know that, you can get back there. As a matter of fact, you will be motivated to recreate this state over and over again until it becomes a station. It's a trick.
It's a trick.
Get an
Not
axe.
a trap. Not a trap, but a trick.
Yep.
Well, you can get in a higher state, but that doesn't mean that you work on yourself, isn't it?
Yeah, well, if you want to get back there, you work on yourself. And that's the job of the person who is leading this kind of stuff, is to go, okay, you like that, huh? That was pretty good. You'd like to experience that again. You'd like to learn to live there, right? Okay, let me tell you how that's done. And then you sit them down and you teach them the ways to work on themselves.
Yeah.
Yeah, but it could be also a spiritual bypass, isn't it?
It could
That
be.
is-
That is the job
yeah.
of the teacher, to make sure that it isn't.
And
Because
that's
the
often
student
where-
will happily spiritual bypass.
Right. And plus, I mean, that's where trance comes in. Sometimes we can mistake catharsis and entrancement for having a spiritual awakening that is permanent and to be carried with us for the rest of our lives. And often that's not the case, right?
It's
Yeah.
always not this case.
Yeah.
Not the case. Yeah. It gets right down
And-
to it.
I think people commonly get confused about that, but I mean, that's why perspective and guidance are important, because as you say, Mushtaq, it's like we talked maybe last week about getting a taste for the thing. And the only way to get a taste is to be in some cases, to be guided into it.
Yeah, but Ailey, you are completely correct that this is a problem area, and since oftentimes you have leaders who don't know what the hell they're doing, you end up in serious spiritual bypassing, because then you create states, but they're not the right ones. They're not the states that we're looking for, if that makes sense. Like I said, it's really easy to create a state of intoxication. All I have to do is get the right rhythms and the right breathing going. You'll feel really good. You think you down 3 or 4 six-packs. But it's
It's a
different.
NLP trick.
What's that, Ailey?
It's a NLP trick, isn't it?
Yeah. And that's not what we're after. So to create a real state of awakeness requires a whole different kind of choreography. And it ain't easy. This is why, at least amongst Sufis, but also in Gurdjieff's work, the apprenticeship to learn this is very long. And Madame de Staltzman, who was the person who was the best at this, I think, was with Gurdjieff for most of his adult life. My teachers all had long apprenticeships with their sheikhs. It wasn't, oh, you've been a sheikh for a year, you go out and you teach now. That's a modern perversion. It's a matter of you spend a lot of time learning things the hard way in order to do this right. And you learn it with somebody keeping account of you so that you don't screw things up. Or if you start screwing things up, they can pull you back.
So that's the point, that you need a teacher, isn't it?
Yes. And you need a teacher who knows. You don't need just any old teacher. You don't need somebody who hung out a shingle and said, hey, let's have fun, give me all your money. You need somebody who spent years training under somebody and can trace that back from generation to generation, where you know that the quality of the technique is proper. I mean, it took me 12 years with my last teacher before he would want me to go out and actually lead zikrs. And that was about average for him. So I'm not particularly dense and stupid. Well, he might say so, but it requires that much skill. They're dropping like flies.
I think people are having connection problems.
Yeah.
And such.
So that's basically what we had to say about this. The idea that I don't know. What do we have to say about this, Nora?
That music can be another avenue through which we experience awakeness and connection, not only to ourselves but to the whole, in a way that is not just our feedback loop with our own ego spinning. Whether that's, wow, I love this song and how it makes me remember the good times in my life. Like, we're not talking about that. This is something bigger than that. This is something deeper than that. And this is about getting a taste of something deeper so that you can make it more of a reality in your everyday life.
Yeah.
And often that might require a little bit of guidance so that you're not going down rabbit holes trying to get that high that you experienced again, because it is not about the high.
Definitely not about the high.
No, it's about creating a sense of everyday, an everyday sense of that oneness and that sense of being awake that you experienced at that peak, just as a matter of course in day-to-day life, without any need to have that high or to do fancy rituals and all of these things that may have allowed you to taste it in the first place. And you can enjoy it. You can enjoy those things on the level of them being another experience that enriches your life. But as far as a long-term aim goes, there is no need to be dependent on or even addicted to those tastes in order to have this be just an everyday affair.
Yeah. So, where can you find out more information on this? Few places. One is in Gurdjieff's book, Meetings with Remarkable Men, Chapter 7. His account of Vitvitskaya, the one woman he mentions in the book with any kind of regularity. And she was very interested in music. Also in various places in search of the miraculous, Gurdjieff will talk about music some. Those are the areas of study that you can find there. Listen to his music. And I recommend specifically that you listen to the Gurdjieff Ensemble and get a sense of what he considered appropriate music to move by, oftentimes. Hazrat Inayat Khan, the Chishti Sheikh who helped bring Sufism to the West, has written several things on music. He was a world-class Veena player, and his work is worth listening to or worth looking at. And then you can ask us questions in the comments, and we
Yep.
will see if we can come up with brilliant answers for you.
And we'll have that playlist that you made
Yes.
to share. So those will offer a number of other examples of sacred music that touches on those things that we discussed in the first half of this talk. You know, rhythm, syncopation, tempo, pitch, harmony, all of those things that are universally impactful on our psyches and on our bodies in building these connections. And also, you know, just examples of really great music.
Yeah.
So there you go. I mean, I'm sure that more will come out in the questions that y'all might have, and we're happy to answer them.
Yeah. Cherie, what was your old church's opinions about music? I was meaning to ask that.
Hi. I've got
Hi.
tech issues too. I remember as a child that every Friday night we played Handel's Messiah.
Really?
At home or at church?
We played it every week. During service, we would sing hymns that were written by church members, and we also sang old-fashioned hymns as well, which was actually really enjoyable.
Yeah.
They didn't. I don't really feel like I was barred from anything at the time. But mind you, I was a child, so I didn't
Yeah.
dictate what was happening. I mean, my mother still really enjoyed country and western and things like that, which is pretty funny when you think about Chinese family driving along to John
That-
Denver and
yeah,
Charlie
that's.
Pride. And
I mean, I wouldn't enjoy the car ride with John Denver playing, I must say, but that is pretty funny.
yeah. Um, and the whole family would sing. So there was no prohibition about that. So uh, that's all I can recall
Okay.
offhand. But I am listening very intently. But it's like the modern music of heavy metal or anything. Like none of the last 30 years I've really actually followed. And I listen to it, I'm thinking, I don't even know who that is. You know, I can't, what's that mean? Can't even
Yeah.
sing along. I wouldn't even know who you're talking about, and just think
Well,
it doesn't move me.
you're not alone, so, you know, nothing to feel bad about.
That's
Yeah.
it.
And we also have our personal proclivities. And while there are certain aspects of music that are, as I said, universally impactful, there are other things that are more culturally dependent and individually dependent. So that is a reality as well. Yeah. Any other questions or thoughts? Aaron, what about you? I know you have to type, but I'm curious to hear from you. And how about you, David? What are your thoughts?
I was thinking a lot about experiences I've had playing music early on, and like Elgar's Enigma Variations or Brahms Number 2 in D major, just these big symphonies and big pieces that are very emotional, and how that is not necessarily toxic, but it's not necessarily conducive to bringing about a state of awakeness. It's more you're in depth and lost in it, even if you're playing very intently and listening to everybody. It's not on that other spiritually uplifting side, I guess you might call it. So I was reflecting on that.
Yeah, and you bring up a good point that I was reading some research, which I can also link to on the forum, and it was talking about how I suppose studies are kind of showing that whatever mood you may bring into your encounter with music listening, like let's say you come in, you're pissed off, and you play a song that has a lot of emotional weight to it. Music has a lot of emotional regulation to it. It has a lot of power to swing you from one mood to another, given its its influence on us. And that is always something to think about. Like if we're depressed, I know this from experience. Listening to depressing music as a teen, which was otherwise beautiful and full of talent and wonderful lyrics or rhythms or whatever, but it would just feed the depression that was there. And I had to kind of take a sabbatical, I guess you could say, from listening to music that I loved because I realized the effect that it was having on my nervous system and on my mental well being. And now I can go back to it and I am more grounded in myself and less swayed as easily by the music, but I understand what had been happening so much better now with that distance. And I'm sorry that David got booted, but hopefully he can go back and catch that response if he wants to. And Aaron, how about you? Aaron says, I've listened to the De Hartmann music many times. And it definitely sounds like it's meant to engage you. Even hearing it several times, it always grabs my attention. Cool, that's good to know.
Yeah.
Yeah, I've heard the Gurdjieff ensemble myself, and it is interesting. It sounds like such a melding of cultures to me. It's fascinating. So yeah, I definitely recommend checking that out as well. And thank you for that feedback, Aaron. That is helpful. All right. Do you need to? Yeah, Ailey.
How about doing voice liberation?
What's that?
Voice liberation, just to come to your own sound. You have to. I think you have to do that. If you, in the world of music, to find your own sound, to know how your body is creating the sound. And I did a workshop on the voice, and I I suddenly my state conscious changed, and I thought myself in line. But I saw it also in other ones. Mostly, if you have to, if you do a performance for a crowd of people, you want there is a feeling of pleasing the other. But now you have to turn inside before the crowd and to be your own voice. And that is, well, that is a challenge, what I experience and what I
And
see in other ones.
I can echo that. I definitely relate to what you're describing, where if I'm not centered in myself when I'm performing, and I'm mostly focused, as you say, on the enjoyment of the audience and giving them what I think they want, let's say, or I'm feeling self conscious about my presentation to them, I'll get lost in that, in my ability to be present with it and to really convey the music through my body in a meaningful way and feel it in myself. That becomes challenged. And if I can instead prioritize that sense of myself, feeling the music and being part of it, having it in me, and often, if not always, it ends up being a better experience for the audience as well.
And that brings us to the secret thing that we're going to talk about right at the end of this, where all of the light weights have fallen away. And that is a specific sort of singing that is used by the Central Asian Sufis, which goes along with freeing the voice. By the way, Noor is an expert on freeing the voice. That's one of the things she teaches. And she's over there going, cringe, expert. No, don't say that. But it's true. But the other thing is using a skill called overtone singing, overtone and throat singing, both, which are related, to produce vibrations that work both in the air and in your body. One of the things that we know is that your voice can vibrate different parts of your body.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
And when it does, it will literally vibrate glands that you have. Like if I get my voice down low and it's coming deep from within me, it's going to vibrate my chest. If I have my hand on my chest, I can feel the ribs and the sternum vibrate. If I bring it up higher, it'll vibrate my throat. If I bring it up higher and hit an overtone, it'll vibrate my pineal gland. And so one of the things that we learn is how to produce those sounds and sing with them, which is very important. to us, or at least to me.
Yeah, throat singing and such is currently your domain, but
Yes, it's
it's
my
something
thing.
that has definitely seemed to tie into other things for you that are also important to you. And it is a practice that actually requires you to be present, doesn't it?
Oh
Because
yes.
you have to work at producing those overtone sounds. You have to work at placement. That's the formal word for it, is
Yeah.
placement.
And if anybody's interested and they make it to our retreat, I will be teaching y'all how to do that. There will be whole sessions of learning how to sing in overtone.
Yeah, we're gonna get a
And
little bit
undertones.
musical at this
Yeah,
retreat.
we are going to get a little bit musical because the retreat is going to address the three qualities of man, of human beings that are, man one, two, and three, plus man four, and how you get there. So we're going to work physically, we're going to work emotionally, we're going to work intellectually, and then we're going to work magnetically.
Dun, dun,
Can you,
dun.
Mustaf, can you do it now? Give an example of your over.
Um, I don't know if this microphone will pick it up. I've never tried it, but I will give it a try if you like.
Yeah.
It goes something like this. First, you find a note. There's my note. And then I'm going to change the shape of my throat and mouth to bring out an overtone just as if I plucked a string. So, I don't know if you can hear it.
Well, you
Yeah.
can you can hear.
I feel it in my
Yeah,
whole head.
Yeah.
that's
It
cool.
breaks.
Yeah, and that's one kind. You have the really low sound that you can produce, and you can have sounds that are even higher and weirder than that. That's like easy midtone.
Yeah.
But I would have to experiment with this mic to get it to pick up things correctly, to really bring it out. But yeah, it's not that hard to do. Hard to do really well, as
And you
I
gotta
have discovered.
feel what you're I'm gonna say. You gotta feel what you're looking for, but I think you all know what I mean when I say that. Yeah. Which is to say, you can have a taste of it through practice, through being taught, or through observing others doing it and trying along for yourself. And once you have that, it's easier to repeat it again and again. Yeah. David, you're back. You made it. Struggling. All right. Do you have any last thoughts?
I am thoughtless. It is really, really hot here
It
this
is.
evening,
My throat's
and we're
actually
like melting.
yeah, dehydrated a little bit. So I think that we are going to leave you all with that, so that we can go head off to dinner time. But we definitely welcome any questions or remarks anyone has, or ideas they want to offer related to what we talked about this evening in the comments. So feel free to share those, and we will respond. And I'm sure others in our circle will be checking that out too, to be part of the conversation. And yeah, I guess we can go on Brady Bunch mode.
Let's go on Brady Bunch mode.
Yeah.
There we are.
I'll imagine Aaron's face, all of your beautiful faces here. So we
You know,
can...
Aaron, we're planning on getting you a camera and microphone for your birthday, so watch out.
Uh-oh, putting him on the spot.
Yeah.
No more excuses left. Too kind, he says. Aw. All right, so we can wave to each other and wave to everyone watching on YouTube. And we will see you next week. Take care.
All right. Bye.